Good evening and welcome to Pints and Quarts, a show brought to you by the Craft Beer Nation. Today is Thursday, January 28th, 2016, and we have our first guest of Season 3 tonight. We're going to have Neil Witte joining us. He's one of 11 certified Master Cicerones in the world, and he actually serves as the Field Quality and Training Manager for Duvel USA, Boulevard Brewing, and Brewery Ommegang. So be sure to stick around and hear what he has to say. And pour some beer in a glass to join us. And while this theme music plays, that's going to be the perfect time for you to follow us on our different social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CBN Community. We're on Instagram at craftbeer_nation. We're on Facebook. And, of course, you can find us on Google+. All right, boys and girls, welcome to Pints and Quarts. This is our Season 3, as we said earlier on our other shows. But tonight we have our first guest of the season, Neil Witte, joining us. Neil, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. And as I just said, Neil, Neil is our one of 11 certified Master Cicerones in the world. His official title is the Field Quality and Training Manager for Duvel Boulevard and Ommegang.
Yep.
So long title. Right, but but good stuff. But before
big
we
job
get to
too, huh?
a big job, right? Before we get into the thick of things, our panel tonight, we have Lola Larissy joining us from Florida. How are you doing tonight, Lola? And Lola can't hear us. And we have Charles Dunkley joining us from New York, somewhere in upstate New York. I can never remember what city Charles lives in. How are you, Charles?
Yeah, I'm in Elmira.
Elmira, New York. There you go. And Gil Mello joining us from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. How are you, Gil?
I'm doing good. Joining from under a pile of snow.
I know you and me both. And of course, I'm joining us from Northern Virginia, little town, just south of D.C., 20 minutes. So, Neil, let's talk about you being one of 11 certified Master Cicerones in the world. How does that make you feel when people say it like that, right? I mean, you're only one of 11 people to have that distinction.
It's a little weird. I kind of like it. You know, it's certainly a small group, but you know, there's more people being added on a semi-regular basis. So
like one
growing.
A year.
Excuse me.
Like one a year.
Yeah, well, you know, they just added a new level in the program, so there's Advanced Cicerone. It's one level below the Master level, so I think that level might kind of help prepare people a little bit more and get them ready to take the Master level. So we might see a little bit higher passing rate. At least that's the thought.
Well, let me ask you this. There's a movie on Netflix, and I'm sure you may have seen it. It's called Somm.
Yeah.
And like that like I watched it, and I had such a great appreciation for it because I know how it can be sometimes when you're trying to break down different aspects of beer, and the way they do it with wine, they have all these different wine regions in France, and these people not only can they tell you which region did the wine come from, they can tell you if it's like the northern or southern part of the region, and then they can tell you what the vintage of the wine and all this other stuff. Like for somebody like me, a lot of red wines just kind of tastes like red wines. So is the testing that intense to become a Master Cicerone as it is to become a sommelier?
Well, you know, it's kind of hard to tell exactly, you know, how it compares from watching that movie. It was an entertaining movie. There were two things that crossed my mind. One was the way they were preparing and how intense it was for them. That's kind of how I felt going into the Master Cicerone exam, because it was about a 4.5-year process for me to pass that test.
Wow.
The other thing that occurred to me is I really hope that I don't ever come across as insufferable as some of those guys were in that show. It was just so terrible. You know, talking about like fresh cut garden hose and stuff like that. It was so terrible. But you know, it's totally different deal with wine, because you know they really can break that down. So you know they can say they can break it down and say, well, it's this type of grape, and then they from that type of grape they're saying, okay, well, it kind of has these characteristics, so it's probably from this region, and then they have to be well studied enough to know a whole lot of different wineries and vineyards in that region to be able to make an educated guess as to who it is. Beer's a lot different. We don't really have that kind of terroir. I mean, there is terroir in beer with certain types of beers, like lambic, for example, things like that, but it's not quite as ingrained as it is with wine. You can't like taste a beer and say, oh, well, this barley came from this region of the world. It doesn't work like that. We have a little bit of that with hops. You know, we'd say, well, you know, this is an American style of hop. You know, this is kind of continental European, or this really has characteristics like a an Australian or New Zealand hop, something like that. So, I mean, there's a little bit of that stuff. So, but you know, it is still a pretty intense test. You know, pretty much everything is fair game.
And it's also different, right? Because nowadays, with the modern craft brewing, it's like they put everything up to the kitchen sink into a beer nowadays. So
yeah.
The quantity of elements and the ingredients on the beer is pretty broad.
Yeah, indeed, and that's kind of one of the trends now that you're starting to see is, you know, for a long time, for many years, you know, regular craft beer drinkers have known that there's always been kind of the hot new hop every year where, you know, hey, we got this brand new hop that's so amazing and it's not like anything you've ever had before and it's totally different. And, you know, a lot of these hops, you know, might have like really fruity flavors, and eventually, you know, people like, you know, Ballast Point was kind of one of the first ones, really. They're like, oh, you want grapefruit in your hops? Oh, you want that much grapefruit? Well, how about we just cut up some grapefruits and put it in the beer? What do you think about that? And people are like, yeah, that's exactly what we want. We want grapefruit in beer. So it's like, okay. And so you're starting to see a lot of brewers do that, too. It's like, oh, you want all these fruity flavors? Well, instead of trying to tease them out of hops in such degree, why don't we just chop up the fruit and put it right in the beer? It's, you know, it's giving you what you want, and people like it. It's you know, as long as it's done well. Right?
Yeah, and to Neil's point, I will say this: in that documentary, there really were like fresh cut garden hose, and they'd be like, this is like Granny Smith apples from a baked apple pie, and then they'd be like, this is like Granny Smith apples from an apple pie that wasn't baked long enough. Like
it's crazy. It was crazy.
It really was crazy. So the first time we actually met you was a little actually we have an internet question. Gil, you had
before we move off the Cicerone topic, I think it might come back, but we have a guy here, Rick Potts. He's a certified beer server, and he's obsessed with craft beer and this and that, but he's asking if it's worth to trying for the Cicerone test if you're not going to be in the biz. Like, you know, because it's a big investment. I think for a Master Cicerone, I think it's nearly $1,000 right now.
I don't know what it's at right now. It's not cheap.
So
I assume he's asking about the certified level exam, which
I think to be a certified Cicerone. What do you think about people becoming certified Cicerone if they're not in the business, or just becoming a beer server certified thing is good enough?
You know, it just depends on how much value you put in that. If you're not in the business, obviously it's not going to help you in a professional sense. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue it if you really feel passionate about it. At the same time, you know, you can use those guides to simply just learn more about beer too. I see the program as being kind of an organized way to set goals to learn more about beer in a lot of ways. You know, I have a friend who's not in the beer business at all, and he's level 1, the server level, and he's very interested in taking certified Cicerone just for kind of bragging rights. It's not going to help him out at all with what he does. It's not going to make him any more money or anything, but you know, it's just what he wants to do. It's kind of another notch in his belt, and you know, so he just wants to pursue it. And that's cool, you know, but it's all about learning. It's just about learning more about beer. So you can learn as much as you want about beer without ever having to take any type of exam. But if that helps you set goals and learn more about beer, and it's a personal goal of yours, then more power to you.
So the first time we met you, Neil, was last summer at I said Brewvival. I'm going to Brewvival next month. Was last summer at Savor. We spoke about this a little bit off air, but let the people know. Are you going to be at Savor again this year? Because we actually interviewed you live from Savor.
Yeah. I haven't quite figured that out yet. Hasn't really crossed my plate. I've been doing a lot of arrangements of some other travel. I don't know exactly what I've got going in that month yet, but it's a possibility.
You need to float your email like every 2 weeks just to remind you.
Yeah, Savor hasn't really come onto my radar screen yet, but there's a possibility for sure.
So, you about to say something?
It's listen to him. I was just wondering a little bit about his journey. If you could enlighten us a little bit or tell a little about his journey to get where he are right now, speaking in big events like Savor and working for Boulevard.
Well, when I started out on this path, I never really thought I would be where I am right now. It's it's just it's been a wild ride and it's fun. Sorry, got a little friend jumped up there. So I started with Boulevard in '97, and I moved to. I'd been working for a brew pub company here in Kansas City. I was a home brewer before that, and working at a winery. Actually, I got into the winemaking business back in '95. But I got on as a brewer at Boulevard, and I just celebrated 18 years. After about 3.5 years of brewing, John McDonald, the founder of the company, wanted to have somebody start to work out in the field who knew a lot about all of the aspects of the business, about brewing, cellaring, packaging, filtration, and all the aspects, so they could take that expertise and apply it in the marketplace and make sure that our beer tasted good. So I started doing field quality stuff and really specializing in draft beer, and I did that for a really long time, and over the years, it morphed into a lot of education, because I can go into a bar and talk to a bartender about how to pour a great beer, but if they don't really understand beer, if their whole understanding of beer is pulling on a handle of Bud Light or Miller Lite and filling a pint, then they're not really going to understand why they should have necessarily a beer clean glass and why they shouldn't be dunking the faucet in beer, et cetera, et cetera. So in order to get the message of quality across to a lot of people, you have to educate them about the basics of beer. So why do we even care what our beer tastes like? So there's all these wonderful flavors in beer, and here's what they are, and here's a little bit about beer. So here's why we should protect these great flavors. So the message gets across a lot better if you start educating people. And then, the Cicerone program kind of came on our radar screen, and I ended up taking the certified level the first time they offered it. It was in April of 2008. And so I was in the first graduated class of certified Cicerones, and at that time nobody really knew anything about it. Wasn't on anybody's radar screen. It wasn't even really much of a thing. We were, as a brewery, we kind of saw that as something that the industry could benefit from, is some type of certification program, and so we were kind of supporting it as a brewery, and I was kind of the guinea pig. And I'm just the right kind of obsessive person that I just kind of pursued that to the end. So the training thing really developed over the years, and then when Boulevard became part of Duvel a couple years ago, I was able to take that job and transfer it to Duvel USA, which is Boulevard Brewing Company, Brewery Ommegang, and all the imported beers.
So you said that you started working for Boulevard back in '97. How did you come into craft beer to begin with?
I started home brewing in '93 after I spent a summer studying in Germany. Like a lot of people in the beer industry, I have a completely unrelated degree. I studied philosophy and German in college. And so I spent the summer after my last year of college in Germany traveling around and studying German. So I came home after drinking all these great beers, and of course there really wasn't a whole lot to choose from. So I started making my own, and I just got really into it. And I wasn't really that good at it, but I was way better at it than any of my friends. So I kind of really started to be proud of what I was doing, and decided that with a philosophy and a German degree, I didn't really know what the hell I was going to do anyway, so I decided I'd get into the beer business. And a buddy of mine was a winemaker at a local winery and brought me on helping with grape crush and fermentations and on a kind of part-time basis while I was managing the wine bar there. And then I hooked up with a brew pub company in Kansas City, worked for them for about 8 months, and then got on at Boulevard.
Nice. So
yeah.
It all started. It seems to be a common thing that it all starts with like a homebrew passion, right? That leads to people getting in the industry.
Yeah, I managed to turn a hobby into a career. It was kind of cool.
That's perfect right there.
On use cases, he could say many inspections of tap lines, many miles of tap line inspections later.
Oh yeah, oh my God, many miles.
So
much dirt.
Can you speak a little bit to it, Zach? I know your title says Field Quality and Training Manager, but like, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that you go out to different bars as a representative of the brewery, showing them how to keep their lines clean? Does it mean that you're making sure old beer isn't on the shelf and your brewery is represented properly, or what exactly does your job entail?
Well, the field quality part of it is a lot of that. So it's going out in the market, working with our field reps, and checking date codes in the off-premise, inspecting draft systems in the on-premise, making sure that the lines are being maintained, teaching people about draft systems, working with draft departments at distributors if and when they have those line cleaning responsibilities, teaching teams how to install and maintain draft systems. I have our whole, we've got about 65 people out in the field nationwide who are doing regular audits in both the on-premise and off-premise, sending those reports to me, and I review all those reports, and that kind of gives me an indication if some problems are popping up in a certain area. We've had issues in certain markets where maybe things weren't being done the way they should, so we follow up on that, and if we need to work with the distributor and help make things a little bit better, we do that. So that's kind of the field quality aspect, and the training aspect is really kind of the beer education part. We've had an interesting couple of years since we became part of Duvel, because we had a roughly 30-person sales team, and so did Duvel USA. And so we came together as a single sales team when Boulevard became part of Duvel. And so I spent a lot of time working with all of our folks on their new portfolio. We had a whole team of people who really didn't know anything about Boulevard beers, and we had a whole other part of the team that didn't know anything about Duvel or La Chouffe or Leafman's or Brewery Ommegang. And so, a lot of preparing materials and working with folks and working with distributors as well when we're rolling out these brands and new distributors. So, that's kind of the training part of things.
So speaking of which, what was that transition like? I mean, because I think it did catch everybody off guard when they announced that Boulevard was being sold to Duvel, but I mean, because it was at that point in history or a point in time where I mean, I think we're still there now, where when a brewery sells, people label it as selling out. Whereas most of the nerds were like, I mean, Duvel is basically craft beer in Belgium, so
that's a big misunderstanding. And
there's not many beer that takes 30 days to leave the brewery.
Yeah, especially it's an ale, and it actually takes 90 days to leave the brewery. It's kind of crazy. It's Duvel actually, when that happened, of course, everybody's like, oh, it's like InBev, buying Goose Island or whatever. I'm like, no, it's really not like that at all. So I mean, if you think about if you look at the numbers, a good point of reference is the year before the Boulevard became part of Duvel. Duvel in 2012, Duvel's overall volume as a company globally was about 700,000 barrels of beer.
Wow.
That put them as being a little bit smaller, I think, than New Belgium Brewing Company. So that kind of puts it into perspective, like the size of the company that you're talking about. So
no, even smaller, I think. That's smaller than Stone.
Yeah, so the overall company now, altogether, our total volume is smaller than Sierra Nevada Brewing Company.
Wow.
That's with Ommegang, Boulevard, all the imported beers, everything that's sold in the U.S. and internationally, it's smaller than Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. So that puts it into perspective. On the other hand, in 2012, Anheuser-Busch InBev made like just shy of 100 million barrels, and that's like, it sounds like a number you like make up. It's not. It's like they sold almost 100 million barrels. So there's really like no comparison at all. And so the cultures are actually really similar. They are. They're like any other small brewer. They want to make really good beer, and they want to sell it for a whole lot of money. And that's what we do, It's and they've been really successful at it, and they've been in business since 1871, and so it's still family-owned, it's privately held. The culture is there. It's about quality of beer, and they care a lot about the quality of the beer. And they also care about maintaining the identity of the different breweries that they own. So if you think about La Chouffe in southern Belgium, nobody really thinks of that as part of Duvel. You think of the little gnomes on the label, and when you go visit there, they're still cranking out as much Chouffe as they can.
I didn't know that, Neil. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't know that La Chouffe was part of Duvel.
Yeah, they are.
And
that's the thing.
DeConic, how do you say?
Yeah, DeConic is part of it too. Yeah, we stopped selling DeConic in the States last year. They're doing a whole lot of work on the brewery right now and kind of retooling things. They're dumping a ton of money into the visitor experience there, and we may see DeConic back in the States before too long, but you never know. Leafman's is a great example too. I mean, that's a historic brewery that was founded in the 1600s, and it's an amazing place. They're making mixed fermentation beers. It's kind of part wild fermentation, part pitched yeast culture, and they make some really amazing fruit sour beers. And they were in receivership. The brewery was out of business. They had gone bankrupt, and Duvel came in and bought them and breathed life into it, and now they're making these same beers that they've been making for hundreds of years, and they've turned the whole visitor center into like a museum of beer, and it's an amazing place.
So,
yeah.
I'm sorry. So Duvel was initially, I think from the beginning, they were an investor in Brewery Ommegang, right? And
yes,
then,
they were.
Okay, so then they picked up you guys. Well, they picked up Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you talk about Firestone Walker's relationship to the whole operation? Because I know that Boulevard and Ommegang are essentially at this point 100% subsidiaries of Duvel, but that's not so much the case for Firestone Walker, right?
Well, Firestone Walker is a part of Duvel. It's just that they are maintaining their own sales team and kind of their own operational independence. So when Boulevard became part of Duvel, it became fully integrated with the U.S. team and with the U.S. operations. And so that was a really big project. It took us almost all of 2014 just to kind of get our legs underneath us and kind of figure out what direction we were going to go. And then last year was like, okay, yeah, now we've kind of got a plan and we can execute it. And so it was difficult, and it actually worked out really well, all things considered. But it's a big project to put companies together like that, and to do it the right way. So Firestone Walker, is going to remain independent operationally, and they're not going to integrate for a little while because part of the reason is because they're doing so well on their own right now. I mean, you can't walk 10 feet in California without tripping over a handle at 805. They're absolutely killing it with that beer out there, and of course, all their other beers are just absolutely phenomenal. You can't go 10 minutes in GABF or World Beer Cup without hearing their name called, winning a medal. So, obviously they make incredible beer and they're super successful and they're growing like crazy. So they didn't want to kind of put that. They didn't want to put them into a position where all of a sudden we're integrating again and stop that momentum, and we're just kind of finding our own momentum as well. And so there's a lot of reason to kind of keep things separate right now. So David Walker and Adam Firestone, the founders of the company, are still there, and they're still running that company the same way they were. They still have their same sales team doing the same things. They now have additional resources from Duvel and the ability to do some more things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do beforehand.
For me, on a personal note, what's incredible is that under the Duvel umbrella now, there's 3 of my top 15 breweries in America, and that for me, on a personal note, it's a big thing,
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite an assembly of brewers that they've got here. I'm really, really proud to be representing the portfolio that we have right now. It's awesome.
For the sake of letting people know, I am drinking a Boulevard Early Riser right now, which is
and it just so happens that I am drinking a Boulevard Early Riser too.
I'm getting a more sessionable beer.
Oh yeah.
That
Aztec chocolate.
Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, nice.
I love that.
This is a new beer, right? This just came out recently.
It is. It just released this month. It's it's made with a Colombian coffee from that's roasted by a small local roaster called Maps, and they did a fantastic job. The brewers put just the right amount in there to make the coffee noticeable, but not beat you over the head with it. And that's kind of a tricky thing when you're dealing with a beer that's got some roast character in it already.
Do you know if they conditioned it on coffee, or did they add cold brewed coffee or hot coffee?
We actually put cocoa beans in the fermenter. We soaked them in the fermenter. So the volume to do a toddy was pretty daunting. And we have some we have a lot of fermenters that are outfitted, and that makes it really easy for us to suspend giant bags of stuff. We make we make chocolate ale every year, and we suspend cocoa nibs in there. So we've got giant ports on the top and bottom of several of our tanks, and we can lower a chain with a winch from top to bottom and just pull the thing up and clip bags, 20-pound bags of cocoa nibs or coffee or whatever, and suspend dozens of them in there and clip it on the inside, seal it up, and then fill it up with beer and let the beer soak in there. So we've got a lot of versatility like that. Making the toddy would have been a nightmare.
And the brewery is beautiful. I mean, if you never did a tour at Boulevard, I mean, a lot of beer, and they served strawberry dipped on chocolate there for a pairing. It was just, it's a worth a trip. Just visit Boulevard.
Yeah, we've got a lot of free tours. We show like 1,200 people a week through the brewery. We're right in the middle of a major construction project, too, where we're building a new tour center, gift shop, tasting room, and a big beer bar on the second level. It's going to be really awesome. And we do some limited tours that you pay for, but they take you in some places that the free public tour doesn't go, and they do some food pairings and stuff. I'm sure that's
it's
probably
worth every cent.
The chocolate-covered strawberries and stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Gil said that's the most beer he ever got at a tour.
The second most.
Okay. So we've seen the collaboration between Boulevard and Ommegang. I think it's just called collaboration, and then it's a number. So,
yeah, that was collaboration 4. Yeah.
Okay. Can we expect a Firestone Boulevard Ommegang collaboration?
I don't know what's going to happen with the next collaboration. It wouldn't surprise me if something like that happened, but I don't know exactly what the next collaboration beer is going to be. But I know we do have one slated for this year, so stay tuned. I'm sure there's going to be an announcement coming soon.
Well, you tell them that we said.
I'll pass that along.
So you get involved often into the. I mean, do you get to try? Do you get inputs in some of the beer, most of the beer? None. As the master brewer, the one who decides everything. How does your position have any influence on?
Well, it's difficult for me to be in all the planning meetings. We've got a whole team of brewers who are really super talented. And there's a whole lot of meetings that happen and planning sessions for all the new stuff that takes place. And I find myself on the road quite a bit. But I am, you'll find me down in the cellar quite a bit, talking with our cellarmen and talking about what's going on and what types of things are in the works and tasting stuff in process and. So I'm following stuff fairly closely as it's in process. As far as the planning stuff, I'm talking with guys in the planning process. But I'm not at the head of the table. Our brewmaster Stephen Powell's and all of our brewers are they're just doing a fantastic job. We've got a lot of talented people at the brewery, and I think if we got everybody who was capable of providing quality input in the same room, we'd probably have about 100 people sitting down. We'd probably never get anything done.
Yeah, that's true. Gil, you had a question about what's it called, the auto?
Well, there's two technical things. Well, I've seen this auto brew that some brew pubs use. How good is the beer on those things? Like if somebody come up with a recipe, and then everything from there on becomes a computer punch number. And I've seen this more often.
Is the push button deal where you just kind of you push a button and it makes you beer for you?
Yeah, it's more computerized things. And I was wondering how good.
I was on an episode of Bar Rescue, and then they rolled that thing out at the end. It's like it's a glorified homebrew system. It's certainly not going to save anybody's business like they were trying to make it do in that show, which is a little silly. But it's neat. I mean, the guy, I saw the thing, and the guy who developed it is a former brewmaster at Heineken, and he walked me through what it does, and it's pretty impressive. I mean, the computer programming and everything that it does is pretty neat, but it takes the person out of it, basically. So, just walking up and I didn't have any beer off of it, but I'm sure it makes something that's drinkable. Is it going to make great beer? I doubt it. It's essentially, it's extract brew, so, it's pulling from a bag in the box of wort, aseptically. Mixes it with water, it mixes it with water aseptically, and it adds yeast automatically and ferments it, and voila, you have beer. It's
So
like a big automated extract homebrew system.
Yeah, so it removes the craft aspect, that artistry of it, I guess.
Yeah, it certainly removes the person, it removes the craft aspect of it, yeah.
I think that would be great for the space station. We'll let the International Space
that's
Station.
Actually, we should take those things and just launch them into space. How about that?
They can have beer.
I just watched The Martian today, so sure.
He couldn't make that up.
I got a post one time that said the amount of money American U.S. movies spend to bring Matt Damon back from different places.
That's like a big joke, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any new beers or any upcoming releases that you want to talk about before we
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of stuff in the pipeline that's coming up really soon. Gil, you're drinking the Imperial Stout. Aztec chocolate. We've got Imperial Stout X Coconut coming out. Shipped in February.
No.
Yeah, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And then I think the one I'm most excited about is Rye on Rye on Rye. So you might be familiar with Rye on Rye. It's one of our limited release beers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Rye on Rye, if you're not familiar with it, is a strong rye beer that's aged in Templeton rye whiskey barrels for a year. It is absolutely amazing.
Incredible.
So this is aged in all first-use Templeton rye whiskey barrels, so it kind of amps up the whiskey character. Then we empty those barrels into a whole other set of first-use Templeton rye whiskey barrels, and then we blend it together. And I tasted it recently, the pre-carbonation, and it's awesome. It's amazing. It clocks in, I think, at about 14.6%. Man, it's really
But
good.
that's not part of the Series X, is it?
No, it's kind of so like last year and with this Imperial Stout Coconut release was us taking a limited release beer and doing kind of an X version and doing different versions of it. So we're going to do a couple different versions of Rye on Rye this year, and this is the first one.
So that's gonna be the 750s, right?
That one actually will only be on draft.
The Rye on Rye on Rye?
Rye on Rye on Rye is going to be draft.
Well, I'll be at the brewery on April. We're going to have some left over.
We'll have to see if we can hold a keg for you. Yeah, there's some fun stuff too. Ommegang's coming out with an Imperial Stout called Shadow Brewer. Fantastic beer. That ships in February. They've also got in March. You may be aware that they've been taking Hennepin and dry hopping it with different hop varieties. So they've had Triskel, they've had Calypso, and this latest one is Matahueca, which is a really interesting hop variety. There you go, Hennepin. So the Matahueca is a pretty interesting hop variety. It's a crossbreed between a New Zealand hop variety and Saaz, that traditional Czech variety. So it's got a lot of that kind of farnesene character in it, which is that kind of flowery herbal character that's really characteristic of Saaz, and then a lot of that tropical fruit that you get from a lot of those Australian hop varieties and New Zealand hop varieties. So that should be really interesting. That's in March. Game of Thrones beer, the new Game of Thrones beer, Seven Kingdoms. It's a strong hoppy wheat beer. Got a lot of C hops, Centennial, Columbus. There's Cascade and Bravo, I think. And then we've got a new Duvel triple hop in March as well. That one's going to be really exciting. So I talked before about how everybody's hunting down the new hops and the new hot hop, and it's kind of gotten to the point now where if you really want to have the hot new hop, you have to have a hop that doesn't have a name yet.
So explain to me a Belgian triple hop.
Well, Duvel triple hop is a stronger version of Duvel that is dry hopped with a different hop variety every year. And so this past year was Equinox. The year before was Mosaic, for example. So it's a 9.5% beer. It's pretty strong. Duvel's 8.5. It's got a lot of those nice, it's got a nice crisp character like Duvel does, but a little bit stronger, and a nice hop bitterness, a lot more hop bitterness, and a lot of big fresh hop aroma. So this year, the hop variety is so new that it doesn't have a name. They're calling it HBC 291. And that's the new Duvel triple hop this year. So
that has a meaning, though. People need to know that has a meaning. That's like from that particular farm. That number references like a particular area of the farm on a particular vine so those numbers mean something. It just sounds like gobbledygook.
Somebody just flip a little.
Yeah. The next one is HBC 292 and 293 or whatever. I don't know. It's just a lot code or whatever before they actually name the thing. So the hop characteristics, as it's been described to me, and this doesn't come out until March, so I haven't had it yet. And since it's a brand new hop, I haven't actually had the hop. but they're describing it as black pepper, rose, and lavender characteristics. It should be really
Wow.
interesting. Yeah. So,
Well,
yeah, a lot of stuff in the pipeline right now.
So, Neil, real quick, and I don't think it can be boosted up enough, the fact that you're a certified Master Cicerone. So I have we have two more questions related to that. The first one is, as a certified Master Cicerone, is that a lifetime certification, or do you have to get recertified on an X amount of years, or?
You don't have to retake it. They haven't made us retake it yet.
Okay.
Hopefully they can't take it back.
Yeah.
We don't like what you're doing. We're taking it back.
Yeah.
But they can take it back all they want, whatever. I'd be a Master Cicerone for life.
Yeah, I don't think they can take it away from me, but I don't know. I'm sure they reserve the right somewhere.
And it's like, Gil, I think you had a question about head on beer or something like that, right?
Well, I try not, because when I came to US, the first thing that I noticed is the lack of foam on beer here, and it's almost like I feel that Americans have a little disregard for foaming on beer. But
yeah, I think part of that is just a result of the beer culture that we've had for so many decades here. It was beer culture was largely just mass consumption. It was something that was relatively flavorless that you just drank a whole bunch of to get drunk. That was evidenced in the way they marketed it with fart jokes and bikini girls. Nice beer, Charles.
and foam is not just the result, right? I had this argument with a friend, and that's why I'm putting on record a Master Cicerone saying that foam is important on many of the styles, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, if you think about all of the different aromas in beer, a lot of them are very volatile. They go away. So right when you open the beer and pour it into a glass, there's aromas that are escaping, some of which are going to just go away. And so you want to capture those. Pouring ahead on the beer does that because those aromas get captured in that lattice work of foam. And so you can enjoy those volatile aromas for longer. That's also part of the reason why you have, certain types of glassware, like your tulip-shaped glassware that, kind of narrows near the top to capture aromas. So that's kind of the thinking there. So yeah, if you're not pouring ahead on the beer, then, you're going to be losing a lot of those aromas a lot more quickly.
Cool.
Thank you.
Well, real quick, I want to talk about 3 releases that are coming up. One is Wicked Wheat out of Asheville, North Carolina. They're releasing their Napoleon Complex. This is going to be in 11.2 ounce bottles, 5.2% pale ale, with a big hop presence, is what they say. And they say that this beer will have most IPAs contemplating their inadequacy. All right. so this beer was on tap at their tap room, but it's good. It's just not started to be shipped from their facilities. And out of Boulder, Colorado, Avery Brewing, they're releasing their second iteration of Tweak. I had the first one last year, and it was a phenomenal beer. 12-ounce bottles. This one comes in at 2 ABV points higher than last year's. This is going to be 17.5%. It's an imperial coffee style aged in bourbon barrels, and we touched on this, I think, this past Friday on our Friday night hangouts when we did Avery. This beer used to be called Meth Addict, but they had to change the name for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, the name was referencing Mephistopheles, which is one of their stouts, because Tweak is Mephistopheles with coffee added.
Yeah, but everybody knows what they were referring to. They're not fooling
clear had a second intention there.
So this batch 2 is ready to go. It's going to be available in 12-ounce bottles in their tap room starting on the 31st, so we can expect the bottles to be rolling out shortly thereafter. And lastly, Creature Comforts out of Athens, Georgia. These guys, if you haven't had any Creature Comforts beer, I got to tell you, this is a small brewery, but they know what they're doing. They have a beer coming out called Emergence. The ABV is unknown, but it's their first big format offering. 750. It's going to come at 750 It's an American wild ale fermented using 4 different strains of their house bred yeast, and then they aged it in wine barrels. So I think I've seen pictures of this beer on Facebook today, actually. So I mean, it's out. So I mean, you probably have to be you have to be in Georgia to get it. But
Yeah. Well, if anybody is in Georgia, reach out to me and I'll send you my address and you can send me a bottle.
That's my line, isn't it?
So, and you said that you guys are gonna have the Rye on Rye coming out soon, and you're gonna have the Imperial Stout with coconut.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, a couple of fun releases, big beers, really great. That Rye on Rye is maybe the one that I'm the most excited about. That Imperial Stout with coconut's gonna be really good too. But the Rye on Rye is going to be a really special beer. We had to do it draft only because we bottle condition all of our 750 milliliter bottles, and and all the carbonation in those beers comes from bottle conditioning. So it's all natural carbonation, and we were too concerned that with such a rich alcoholic environment that our bottle conditioning yeast might underperform. So we're doing draft only because we wanted to get this beer out there, and it's going to be fantastic.
Did you see, does the coconut, which series does it coming out? With the one with the coconut?
That's Imperial Stout. It's going to be the same label as the Aztec chocolate that you're drinking right now. Yeah, that right there. That's it's Imperial Stout with coconut.
I gotta tell you, man, that you guys hit home runs with this smokestack series because all the Imperial Stouts that I've had have been awesome. Obviously, Rye on Rye is actually one of my favorite beers.
Yeah, me too.
There's one beer that you guys make that I think is grossly underappreciated, and that's Harvest Dance, which is the wheat wine.
Yeah, and that's actually been retired.
No.
I hate to disappoint you guys. We're making over 30 different beers this year, and we did the same thing last year. So, something's got to give. Harvest Dance had a long run. I'm not going to say that it's never going to come back. It might, because there are a lot of people who really love that beer, myself included. That was my Thanksgiving dinner beer. That's what I poured with Thanksgiving dinner, and it went with everything on the table.
I call it barley wine's little brother. Right? So,
yeah, because you don't see a lot of wheat wine. I can remember at the top of my head maybe 2 or 3, and that was a hilarious label too, with the Reaper dancing with the
Grim Reaper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great beer. But when you make a whole lot of different beers like we do now, you rotate things in and out. So. Yeah.
Not to mention also your quad.
Yeah, the 6th glass.
There's another
barrel
one.
Quad.
Yeah, the bourbon barrel quad. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And
well, the 6th glass is the base beer for bourbon barrel quad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also what's the black IPA? Grainstorm.
Oh yeah, it's been a few years since we've made that one.
Yeah.
We only made that I think for a couple of years, and it was probably 3 years ago last time we made that. That was a really good beer, the Black Rye IPA. That was nice. Yeah.
So, man, I tell you, you guys you're hitting some home runs with a lot of your beers, man, and you're doing it right, man, and nobody I don't think in the craft beer nation views you guys selling to Duvel as being an instance of selling out, because for everything, all the reasons that you named earlier, right? I mean, Duvel is essentially craft beer, but it's just in Belgium. That's the only difference. The passion is still there. I mean, it's about the bottom line at the end of the day, because you got to remain profitable, but
and it was also a succession plan for John McDonald. He didn't have, he has 2 kids that really weren't really in a position to take over the brewery. He wanted to hand it off to people that he knew was gonna carry on his vision.
So,
have you tried the chocolate ale with raspberry? Did that come out yet?
Yes, I have. Yeah, the chocolate ale with raspberries. It's got a nice twist to it. So the raspberries give a nice little fruitiness and acidity to kind of balance out the that big cocoa flavor that you get in the aroma and flavor of that beer. It's nice.
How did I forget about that beer?
Well, the chocolate ale is a beer on its own. I have a hard time to compare it to any other beer or any other. I think it's alone on it flavor-wise for me, at least.
It's a really unique beer because it's a collaboration beer with a local chocolate maker. His name is Christopher Elbow, and he's got a great reputation here in Kansas City, and he's got another place in San Francisco actually. He does a really fantastic job, and he likes to kind of think outside the box with the chocolates that he makes. He puts flavoring and adds ingredients to chocolate that are completely unconventional, and so he sees chocolate as kind of a vehicle of flavor, as he puts it. So he does some really interesting stuff. And so in that same vein, when he worked with Stephen Powell's, our brewmaster, on this beer, they really wanted to make something that was not your average chocolate beer, because a lot of people will make a chocolate beer that is in a stout or a porter or something that already has kind of chocolatey characteristics to it. They wanted to do it in an amber ale that was something that you wouldn't expect any chocolate flavor to be coming from. And so it really is kind of a surprise if you've never had that beer before when you drink it, how chocolatey it really is in a beer that you wouldn't ever think would have that in it.
Well, Neil, speaking of surprises, you're gonna like this one.
You're gonna love this one.
We know a guy. We know a guy who might know a guy who might know a guy.
And that's one of those guys that, yes.
Spit it out, fellas.
This guy may be having some creature comforts coming your way.
Oh, really?
So,
all right.
That's all I know.
Okay. All right. I like that surprise.
So now this person is watching. We're not going to say them air because, for whatever reasons, but now you are committed to sending Neil creature comforts. You got to do it now, man.
All right. Hey, yeah, got to do it. So
that said,
creature comforts.
They're amazing, man. So that said, Neil, man, this has been fun, man. This has been great. We really enjoy. We spoke to you at Saber. We're speaking to you tonight. It's been too long. We gotta have you on more often, man.
Yeah, let's.
We're like 25 minutes over time, and it's still.
I could go for another hour, man. Let's keep going.
Well, look, thank you so much for your time, man. I know it's what 9:27 out there in Kansas City right now. I think you're an hour behind.
Yep.
We really, really do appreciate you spending some time with us tonight, man. Sharing a little bit of your knowledge and your expertise, and
it's my pleasure.
Let's pick that Master Cicerone brain of yours. So, thanks so much. Thanks so much for blessing us, man. And until next time, guys. I'm not sure who we have on tap for next week, but until then, find some great beer, find some great friends, and mind those P's and Q's.
Cheers.
And also, we're gonna be having Nicole Ernie on another Master Cicerone. She's gonna be on in a couple months. So
all right, Nicole. Yeah, she's great. You'll love her.
I figured you all would know each other.
Yeah, we have a secret handshake.
Sounds awesome. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.